friends, it is time to start doing it your way. This is episode 21 of the Women Inspired Podcast. Welcome to the Women Inspired Podcast. I'm your host, April Seifert. There is nothing more powerful than a woman who is inspired to action, and that's my number one goal, to inspire you, my listeners, to take action in your lives. Each week, I get to interview some of the most inspiring women, and I'm bringing those interviews to you. Let's do it. Jana Shortal grew up in a small town in southern Illinois and moved to Minneapolis after being wooed by the beauty she saw during a visit to the cities in the fall. She began reporting for KARE 11 in 2003, and she now co-anchors a show called Breaking the News on KARE 11. If you've ever encountered Jana on social media, you have likely been struck by her compassion and her incredible way with words. She's also one of the bravest people I've ever seen, using her social media presence to be authentically herself and to stand up for causes and topics she feels strongly about. It's for this reason that I am beyond excited to introduce you to Jana Shortal.
Well, hey, everybody. So today is a really exciting episode of the podcast because what I want you to think about before you listen to this is think about a person who you really admire and somebody who you admire for reasons that are, maybe it's the work that they do, maybe it's the way that they live life, maybe it's all of the above or something else that's very important. And then having the chance to meet that person. So today, I am taking my little podcast mic on a bit of a field trip for the first time ever, and I am recording live at the KARE 11 television studios in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and I am sitting across the table from one of those women who I have really admired for a while now. So I'm excited today to have you meet Jana Shortal on the podcast.
Hi, everyone out in podcast land.
This is a really cool day. I think you all are going to love her story and what she has to share for a number of reasons, but I will keep myself from getting ahead of myself. And for those of you who haven't followed Jana or met her in some sort of television and or social media way, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself so we can get to know you.
Oh, goodness. Where shall I start?
It's always a hard question. Tell me about your whole life.
Well, this morning I brushed my teeth.
Me
just
too.
For you.
Oh
I know.
God.
We're all the same.
Yes.
We're all the same. A little bit about myself. I am a native to a very small town in southern Illinois. I found my way to KARE 11 via I-70 through Missouri, and I thought I'd stopped in Kansas City and would settle my life there. And then a fellow named Tom that was running KARE 11 at the time gave me a call 2003 after seeing my work from someone else that showed it to him and asked if I would come up for a job interview. And I said, absolutely not. I don't know where Minnesota is. And I watched Beverly Hills 90210, and they said it was really cold.
It was. Shannon Doherty lived here.
Right. And they lived in Wayzata. I couldn't even pronounce the name right.
No.
Such keen writing on that show. So all jokes aside, I did come up for the interview, and the trick was it was in October of 2003, and for those of you listening that have not been to Minnesota in October, you're missing one of the wonders of the world because it's stunning and beautiful and no humidity, and it's 47 different colors all the time. You feel like you're in a painting. Yes, like
security.
Completely.
Yes.
Minnesota was flirting hard, and I fell for it. And that's how I wound up in Minnesota. Now I'm a proud Minnesotan, almost 14 years later. And that's how I got here. I never could have imagined that this would have been my life as a kid growing up in the middle of nowhere. We used to pop tar bubbles for fun.
Nice.
Like when they tar the roads, because I lived on roads that they tar and then gravel. It wasn't this asphalt fancy stuff you guys get here. No, and so sometimes, must have been around quitting time, when they'd throw the tar down and not put the gravel on yet, and we would just sit in the ditches and pop bubbles. Now, I know what you're thinking, good parenting. Parents let you sit in the ditch of a road, but only like 2 cars went by the whole day.
Right.
So
it's very safe.
Pretty keen. So going from tar bubbles in the middle of nowhere to television was quite a change.
I can imagine. Actually, I can't imagine. Right. Because, well, the small town part I can. Grew up in North Dakota, but the being on television television every day cannot even imagine. But we'll get into some of that. So tell us a little bit about your job now, what you do, what your day is like.
My job today, in March of 2017, is remarkably different than it was a year and a half ago. I came to KARE 11 as a general assignment reporter. What that means to all of you is basically we have a team of reporters for our daytime newscasts and for our nighttime newscasts, and you cover the news of the day. Bad stuff, good stuff, boring stuff, weather stuff, sports stuff. That's what they call a general assignment. It's very different every day. You don't have a lot of autonomy. In January of 2016, KARE 11 launched Breaking the News, which is a show I co-host with Rena Sargentopoulos. And the idea of this show, you're sitting in the Breaking the News war room right now.
Yes! I feel so cool.
Isn't it a mess? It's so great because
There's a whiteboard with important things on it. I'm freaking out.
See, here's the thing. So I wasn't here yesterday. I was a bit under the weather, and so that whiteboard would be worse if I would have been here because I get crazy.
I love it.
But they seem to have really followed the rules yesterday. So Breaking the News is supposed to be a show that flips the script of a traditional newscast because everybody listening to this, I know you've seen a traditional newscast. They start with news. They do like 12 stories. And it's usually a male and female anchor, and they kind of talk like, tonight on KARE 11 News, and they tell you who's fighting at the Capitol, and then shots fired here, and this school's closed. Our goal was to only do 3 stories based on what people are impassioned about, or what they should be impassioned about. So that can be any number of things. That can be the debate over guns. That can be trans people in bathrooms. That could be last week. It could be when the American Girl doll folks introduced a boy doll. But opening up a bigger... So if that were on the news, they just do a 20... Oh, the American Girl doll first has its first boy doll. Well, so we sit in here and think about, well, duh, it's 2017. Why is this? And then broaden it to a larger story about gender and toys and clothes for kids. And so how kids learn their gender, how girls, there was a study done a few months ago that little girls, if you ask them from when they can comprehend the question, so probably 3, are you as smart as Billy? Yes. 4 years old. Are you as smart as Billy? Yes. 5 years old. Are you as smart as Billy? Yes. 6 years old. Are you as smart as Billy? No. Boys are smarter than girls.
Yeah.
Something happens in how something's happening in their environment. So we wanted to do that story, like put all of those little pieces together and do a broader story. It may be, so that's the idea. That's why there's only 3 stories in 30 minutes.
I love it. I love it so much. So through that vehicle, you have gotten to cover some incredible stories. And in this area and in this region, one story in the recent past that was extremely powerful was sort of I don't even know if culmination is the right word, but I'll use that one for lack of a better one. Culmination of the story of Jacob Wetterling and his kidnapping. So it has been a mystery, really, or somewhat of a mystery for decades in this area. He was taken I don't even know the exact number, 20-ish years ago, 26 years ago.
Maybe you'd have to check me on
Sure. Over 20 years ago. And only recently, the man who was responsible for his kidnapping and ultimately his death confessed. And you had a chance to cover that story. What was that like? Because my heart gets heavy thinking about even having to talk about it, let alone doing it very publicly.
That's a story, April, if you're not from here, you quickly know, especially in news, very soon after you arrive, how important the Jacob Wetterling story is to this region, to this country, but especially to this region. I didn't grow up here, so I didn't know. I didn't have that sense that people had about it. And there's a lot of debate. We could talk about why it's important and why, for whatever reason, it literally sunk into the pores of people that lived here. And it went unsolved. And for many reasons, there's a very famous podcast that was just done this year about it and why it was so important and why it went unsolved. And I distinctly remember the Saturday morning that the news news started to break, it was literally like 6 o'clock in the morning, and for whatever reason, I woke up and I was obviously on Twitter, because what else would I be doing? And I saw the story starting to break, and you just couldn't believe it. Like this, you couldn't believe after all that time that, these cases just don't get solved after almost 30 years. Yep. They just don't. So that began the thing. And then, coming into a newsroom, as a news reporter, no matter doing breaking the news at that point, you are now all on your team. Like, what do we do? Because we haven't prepared for this day. Yeah. You hope for this day, sort of. But then when the day comes, you realize you've been hoping for something that then it's sitting in front of you, and it's so awful because now you're going to know what happened.
Yeah.
So that's how it started. And for that entire week, that was kind of the trajectory. The discovery of Jacob's remains led to finding out, because the only reason they were able to discover Jacob is that the person was already in custody for pornography charges, and he confessed to the crime. So that started a very short week. I mean, it was a normal week with 7 days, but it felt short because every day you would find out probably more. I don't remember honestly what day it was. That time is really hard for me to remember because so many things happened. But the killer, whose name I don't usually like to say, so I'll just call him the killer, was in court. And what happened was he entered his plea, and as part of his plea, he had to say what he did. We knew that was coming the day before. As a news organization, you know what time. I mean, there are things that you can know, but never really be prepared for it. So I vividly remember that day at home. And I believe Rena was out of town. And so, yeah, she was. And so I remember being really nervous because I'm not a traditional news anchor. I'd never really done this before. I'd only been doing it for 8 months, just thinking how I was going to be composed.
Oh, absolutely.
And then as a human, moreover, just realizing when you're getting dressed in the morning, it's the opposite of excitement. It's dread. It's like, we're going to find out things that are going to be so terrible. Mm-hmm. And it's my job to, first of all, ingest those things and then disseminate them to the public in a way that we also have to figure out how much do you want to know. So all that stuff's kind of going through your head. And then I remember sitting at my desk, listening to the live feed that we had through our technology of the killer saying what he did, this fast forward to noon. And it was just, I never hear, people like openly gasping in the newsroom, like, because you knew but you didn't know. And then that's it. I did my show that night, and I remember probably 6 years ago, maybe it was 8, there was a tip in the Wetterling case 8 years ago that they thought they'd solved it. And that was the first time I really was like in the trenches of the Wetterling story. And I was at the Wetterling, it's not a farm, but they kind of live off a rural road in St. Joe. And I talked to Patty Wetterling that day for the first time. And what I remember talking to her on that day, asking if she's hopeful, realizing what a grotesque question that is. Mm-hmm. And that day, remember seeing her and almost seeing my own mother, and that you never stop being a mom. And so when this happened just this last fall, I felt the same thing. And so when I had to go on the air, I just, sealed myself into my body and remembered that this is every mom and dad, everybody that has a kid, feels this in a different way. And to remember that this isn't just a sensational story that's getting solved, that this is about a family that lost their kid. And that's really sad. And so all I wanted to do that night is to fairly represent the Wetterling family.
It was, I remember when the stories of that confession came out, pausing and wondering whether I should even click on them, because, as you said, everyone had suspicions about what likely happened, but once you know it, you can't unknow it, and you can't roll your mind back and those images. And I am a parent, and my mind went immediately there to my daughter then to Patty and seeing her in the interviews she gave in the days after and thinking, that woman is Superwoman. She's incredible. And it's worth looking up the interviews that she did in the days after, because it is just some of the most powerful words and the most powerful outlook on life that I have ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you do that.
I don't either. And I don't think, I think Patty's probably been asked that question. And it's a question that she didn't ask for this.
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely.
And she didn't ask to be, but what she's done in the years since is devote her life to making sure, at least on her watch, we can't say it'll never happen again, but we can sure as hell fight to make it not happen.
Yeah.
And that's what she does now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that was that day.
That coverage, that story, and of you covering that story went pretty dang viral afterward, but for a really dumb reason.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing posts, Facebook was full of these posts about how it wasn't about Jacob at that point. You mentioned getting dressed that morning. It wasn't about him. It was about what you decided to wear into work.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Just the situation. I can't really elaborate on what I decided to wear to work that day, because there wasn't a lot of... It's just that gets into a whole other discussion that we can have about how I dress and how I present as a woman that some people have a problem with. Yeah, I think it was probably the next day. I don't say this person's name, but a local gossip columnist, for lack of a better term, has made a career out of, in my opinion, sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes being rather rude and critical of television personalities. And I realize that we are in a public medium and we are in some way public figures. So absolutely, if she's called me out before on things I've worn or said, but sometimes she does it with she goes beyond what's acceptable. And in this case, she went beyond the pale. So what happened was I got to work the next day, and this person often will start baiting you on Twitter, which is what happened. And I thought, she baited me on Twitter and asked me a question to the effect, you could find it if you Google it, but I'm paraphrasing here, something like, hey, Shortal, are you sorry about what you wore covering Jacob Wetterling's death? And I responded, because I knew what route she's going down. And I just responded, the only thing I'm sorry for is that I had to cover the story in the first place. And I thought that would be the end of it. But as the internet can do, it started to pick up steam. And for whatever reason, that person, I don't know if that motivated her fully to keep going with it.
Because you didn't react, or you didn't...
I reacted. I thought that, question, answer, move on, because this is really gross. Even thinking, it just makes me sick. Just you're not really gonna...
No, absolutely.
So I kind of put it away, and then I heard from a few people on Twitter, is this for real? Because they saw her tweet. And I'm like, I guess. They're like, well, I'm gonna go tweet back. I'm like, feel free. Just, I don't want to deal with it. And I went about my day, and then right before showtime, so it was literally 5 after 6, when I'm getting ready, I got a direct message from that writer saying that writer had what she needed, and within 10 minutes, this story that was ultimately removed by the Star Tribune went public. She published it. And it was something to the effect of, it was about what I was wearing covering the Wetterling story, and the accusation was I cared more about appealing to hipster trends than I did about covering the death of a little boy. And I didn't know what to think. I had to go on the air. I don't really remember that night as much. I just remember driving home thinking a lot of things that I've thought over the last 30 years of my life, but this one was too far. Most of the time I don't fight back because I know that some women just don't like the way I present, and I have to deal with that. But this time, I wasn't going to let her take Jacob's name and the Wetterling name and put it in this mud bath when they were going into something that's just not important.
Yeah.
And so I went home, and I live alone, and I honestly poured a beer and sat at my laptop and tried to breathe for a minute and read it again and wrote what I wrote. I didn't expect. I was just standing up for myself at that point,
right,
and standing up for the family and friends of that family because this garbage need not be near them. No, just think about it. If you Google Wetterling Star Tribune that night, you'd see that trash,
right,
not the news story. Mm-hmm. And that's disgusting and despicable. So my response was just to say that's disgusting and despicable, and to stand up for myself and to say exactly what I did that morning. And none of what I did that morning was trying to win the praise of a fashion show. I was literally trying to survive it, like everybody else.
I remember reading your Facebook post and thinking of every time that I had been made fun of when I was a kid for not being exactly the same as everybody else. Every time that I had maybe would have felt more comfortable being a certain way, but didn't, because I knew that it would be easier in a social situation to do something else. And I remember reading it and thinking, holy shit, this person's like, they're like owning it and coming back and saying, no, that's cool. This is me, and I'm going to show up and I'm going to do my job well. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't have anything to do with the outfit that I happened to put on that day. And I know you didn't go out and write that Facebook post hoping to get the praise of people and hoping that it would go viral, but it did. And I think it did because it's something that so many of us can relate to. Mm-hmm. This idea that there's so much pressure out there for us to be a certain way, dress a certain way, have certain opinions, be quiet, small, whatever it is, act stupid in some situations when we may know more than we, are letting on. Mm-hmm. All of those things, we let them impact us. And I just like fell in love that day when I saw that post, because I'm like, oh my God, she's saying no. And we don't do that enough. I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway and let you talk about it. Have you always felt that sure of yourself? Like, I'm just going to fight back and say no?
No.
How'd you get there?
That article.
Wow. It's like the exact opposite of what you wanted to happen with that article. Like, I'm going to tear this woman down. And you were like, nah.
And I can't say that I knew that day. I mean, I was getting to that place, I will say, in the last year, because I was getting more comfortable and I was presenting in all the ways that you talked about. I was no longer trying to pass anymore. Mm-hmm. I was just presenting as myself. That piece of garbage and myself intersected that night like a T-bone collision. And I had a choice to make. Stay quiet and like go back and look at what I wore. I'm like, dang it. Like I've done so many times, like trying to get it right. But that time, no. And I'm not doing that. I remember, like, I've looked at that video, like, maybe one time, just to see. I'm like, what did I wear? And I'm like, no, that's what I always wear. Mm-hmm. I mean, how many times do you see men in a pair of jeans, wingtips, and a suit jacket with a pocket square? That's what I wore. Mm-hmm. It's not an abnormal outfit. Is it an abnormal outfit for a woman in television news? Sure. So would it have been more respectful of me to look like I'm on Good Day LA? Should I wear a tight shirt and a skirt? Is that more respectful?
Mm-hmm. Just for the one day.
Yeah, like, what do you want from me? And it was just, for that person, I don't know why she picked that day to talk about that thing. Mm-hmm. I wear that thing every single darn day, so you could pick on me for what I wear on any day. She just picked the wrong day. And that's why I think it went viral. And in addition to the things that you said, but I think it definitely Maybe it would. I don't know. But because it was in that context is why I felt like Superman coming out of the phone booth. Like, no way. Not now. And I know that now. All these months later, God, it feels like a lot, but it's not been that long.
No, it really hasn't.
Because it's changed everything. I feel like more confident in it because it wasn't about me. It was about all of those people who just told me the story you told me. It was every single person that read that and it's like, and had felt that way. And I would guess that every single person, no matter how they present, has felt that way.
Absolutely.
And it's enough. No, I don't want to live in a community where little kids, especially, that's in their newspaper and that's okay. No, that's not okay. I don't want kids to grow up that way.
Totally agree. And what's interesting about what you just said, it's something that we've talked about in a number of episodes on this. It's crazy, the confidence and the motivation and the just all out grit superpower you get when the why behind your actions is perfectly aligned. If it's something you actually believe in, it's something you feel very strong about, and that's absolutely pure. It's amazing what you can get done when you've got the right why behind your actions.
That's true.
And you had Jacob and his family and the rest of us who have felt like outsiders countless times in our lives. You had us behind you, but in particular that family to stick up for.
Yeah, those hours after that were bizarre. I didn't expect any of that.
Can't imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it probably happens to anybody that's just going about their normal day and then something happens. It's like akin to winning the lottery, except like not in that, I don't equate it, but it's just like everything's different. Like your phone's ringing off the hook, your computer keeps pinging. I had to shut everything off because I didn't know what was going on. People were calling, then I hadn't talked to. I came into work the next day at 5 o'clock in the morning because I was just like terrified of my own apartment. Like, at least here it's loud and all this stuff. And I also didn't know what that was going to mean. Like, what do I do now? So, yeah.
And that's given you, I mean, you had, a large platform before, but when something like this happens, I mean, that snowball starts running. And what I think rolling, snowballs don't run, they roll, whatever. What I think is amazing about you is that you have used that platform to be vocal about things that you care about and other issues that are really important. I mean, if those listening, if you follow Jana on social media, you beautifully write in these short social media appropriate length posts that you capture just the importance of so many issues. There's been a rise in anti-Semitic acts in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. There's been a lot of other racist acts in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. There's been little kids that you sat down and talked with about very open personal things, and you've shared those stories, and little girls who have dressed up like you. And that is it's just so cool that you've used that platform in such a responsible way.
Thank you. Not everybody thinks that way, but I think, and you've probably covered this a bit on your, a little bit about what you just said about the why. I think once you get to a point where you did do something that was completely unapologetically authentic to yourself, and it felt real, it felt really scary, but it also felt like there was no way to turn back.
Cat's out of the bag now.
Yeah. And we are living in a time where, unfortunately, so many issues are happening that I can't stay quiet about. I can't stay quiet much about anything, and that's all that's for. It is something that is untraditional in my industry, and it has been documented that there are people in my industry that think I'm absolutely crazy and shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. But the last, if I get fired today, I did it on my own terms.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't anything that you can find on my social media pages or things that I've said that I will back off from now, that I'm like, no, you're right. It's okay to talk about women that way. Or no, you're right. Maybe those people were just kidding when they were threatening to blow up Jewish community centers. No. And I know that it's different for news people to do. But at some point you're a human too.
Absolutely.
With a voice.
Oh my God. Absolutely.
And the whole idea of the show that I work on is having our audience experience the actual news. I'm experiencing it too. And so there are things I don't post about, but there are things that I just get so drawn to that I have to. I wrote a post shortly after the infamous Billy Bush tapes came out with then candidate Trump. And the only reason I wrote it is because I was at home in my little town with my 3 nieces who were completely oblivious to it, and made me sad that they would grow up in a world where at that time there was a presidential candidate talking about women in that way, and then people legitimizing it, saying it's locker room talk. Like, I just had to say something. It was probably not smart as a journalist, but I didn't care because it was smart as a woman and as an aunt.
There's this blog post that and the author is totally escaping my mind right now, but she wrote a blog post and then eventually a book about the things that people, as they're dying, the things that they regret. And one of the big ones is being quiet and living a life that other people wanted them to live and not being authentic to themselves, because ultimately they look back and they wish that they would have done exactly what you're saying. They wish they would have, shared those views, especially on the things that they think are really important.
I won't have that concern.
I love it. So you're sharing these things really openly, and not everybody agrees with you. Some people really probably disagree with you a lot, and you probably hear from those people.
Yeah.
That's not easy. I can't imagine. How do you do that? Because I think about myself, and I like glom on to those comments. So how do you do that?
First, you have to ask yourself when you're about to say something publicly on a public platform, which hey y'all, Twitter and Facebook are public platforms. They're not your private journal. You have to be confident and really truly 110% believe what you're saying, and then you're ready for that. But don't be naive that it won't happen, because if you're going to dive into an issue that's sensitive, that could happen. So I'm used to it. The majority of my negative comments probably come on Twitter or email or written mail. I can't imagine. KARE 11 has been kind enough where they don't share them, I guess, all with me. I'm sure that the public file is full of things that people say about me, because I know what they say directly to me, so I can only imagine, their anonymous option is probably much larger, but that comes with the job. Some days it's really hard. Some days we also live in a time, unfortunately, that it's fine to disagree with me. That's great. And I engage a lot on Twitter with people who disagree, because I'm not looking for everybody to have the same opinion as me. That's a boring, really terrible world to live in. Mm-hmm. I'm asking people to just be educated about the issues and absolutely believe what is true to you. Completely. If you have beliefs on even same-sex marriage that I don't share, and you have them to your core and can give me a compelling reason as to why, I totally respect that. School vouchers, what have you, I totally understand. But when it gets, the thing that's different, it feels like to me, is that when it's a woman, it gets really icky really quickly. My friend, who we just did a story last week with her about comments, internet comments.
She gets a lot of them.
Yeah, and a lot of them are, you should get raped, you should die, you're ugly, no one's ever going to want to have sex with you, I wouldn't have sex with you if you were dead, stuff like that.
I would hope you wouldn't have sex with anybody if they were dead,
right. But it's like it immediately turns to a woman's body, and if she's So the same, like I get called an it a lot. What is it? Talking about my gender, I guess. I don't mean.
Hippopotamus.
Right, I know. The only time it makes me sad, or what does make me sad, is that my mom is on the internet and my nieces, and they tag my name.
Yeah.
And it really hurts them. And there's no way they didn't choose this life.
Right.
I did.
And sometimes it's hard watching somebody else go through something, and when you're the one that's in the middle of it, you know where your mind's at. You know how bad it stings, or maybe how bad it doesn't. Like, you know where you're at that moment to moment, and those people don't.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
You're a mom. I mean, no matter how old no matter how old I get, my mom is still my mom. And so to see those things said about your kid, like, I am someone's daughter, I'm someone's sister, I'm someone's friend. People somehow on the internet, blinders to that. Or maybe I can't imagine that they speak to their own family and friends that way, but yeah, that happens. On this brighter side of that, I've had people reach out, mostly via email, some via Twitter, but mostly email, viewers of our show who believe that I go too far in whatever direction, whether it be women's rights or immigration or whatever. And I've developed some pretty fascinating internet or email friendships with them because I explain, and then I ask them to explain, and then they explain. And it's great. I think that's fantastic. I don't hate anybody. I have a point of view. I have an educated point of view because I'm a journalist, but it doesn't mean that I don't want to hear from people that also have one. But I don't, and I can separate those pretty clearly from just straight up trolls. I don't know. I will never know what it does for a person to type that and send it, and then walk away feeling what?
Totally.
Like they feel good. They feel powerful. Like that they took my power, put me in my place. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So thinking back over all of it, this, journey that you've been on for the past few months, lifetime, what advice do you have for other women?
I think that we all will have a moment like this, or several, and it may be on the playground, it may be in a work meeting, maybe that day that you just can't be shushed one more time. It may be because your idea got taken, and it was your idea, and somehow now it's there. Wait, what? Standing up for yourself when you're sure that what you're standing up for is the real thing is really empowering, and one thing will lead to another. Standing up for yourself can be in any genre. It can be at home. It can be at work. It can be just within yourself when you hear yourself like talking to yourself negatively. And I guarantee you that if you do it enough times, you won't be able to turn back. It's building that confidence that can happen at any age. It happened to me at the age of 38. So and now it comes with its own set of responsibilities, because it doesn't mean that everybody's going to like you. It just means that you are liking you in a real and authentic way.
Totally. And
you might have to fight for that. But it seems clearer almost, like it's not as foggy anymore. Nothing seems as confusing as it once did. That night, every night before, when I would get criticism like that, I would have literally beat myself up, took a melatonin and went to bed and vowed the next day to wear the right thing.
Yeah.
And the next day, I got pushed back on this. The next day I was like, I wore black trousers, a white button-up, and suspenders. I never would have done that before. But I wear that because when I'm dressing up, because that's how I like to look nice. And that was coming back bigger. Like, no, I'm not going to come back in something else.
I love that so much. Who inspires you?
Oh, goodness. I mean, the easy answer is my mom. she made me this way, whether she may regret it now.
Blame the mom. It's always the mom's fault. Yeah, totally.
If I were in prison right now and had done something terrible, I would say it was her fault as well.
Yeah, well, obviously.
Strong women, I think, are plentiful right now, and they're coming out of their corners.
Mm-hmm.
And that energy is palpable.
Mm-hmm.
It's happening online. It's happening in real life. And I love that. I can't tell you how many times I've listened to Lemonade by Beyonce, and that's really done something for me. My friend Nancy is a badass over at Clockwork, and she's been a mentor.
I love her so much.
Yeah, she's been a good friend, and not to be cheesy, but Ellen's a badass.
She is.
Listening to last week after the Oscars, or whatever day that was, Viola Davis talk about imposter syndrome. I'm like, you're Viola Davis.
I know, like, what hope is there for the rest of us mortals?
It gave me all of it, because I'm like, you're Viola Davis, man. We can do this. But it's because we've been knocked down. And I had what day was it? Yesterday, the day before, it was International Women's Day.
Yeah.
And my producer is female, and we knew that, like, me doing anything with International Women's Day was going to the fangs were going to come out.
Totally.
So we built an entire segment over here's some facts for you about white women earn 80 cents on the dollar of men. Latina women earn 54 cents on the dollar. Black women earn 63 cents on the dollar. Then we move to 1 in 6 women will have been a victim of an attempted or successful rape. We have a sexual violence problem in this country.
Yep.
We moved on to family care, as you will know. What we do for mothers is not awesome, and fathers. So we just came out with here's 5 things that, like, because if we would have just celebrated Women's Day, we would have got the feedback. But once again, I got a phone call from a radio station that was doing a live broadcast after the show, and they're like, "Oh, we want to talk to the oppressed women. What's wrong with women are oppressed? Women are oppressed."
I'm so mad all the time.
Like, first of all, you're both men, so let's start there.
Yep.
Also, International Men's Day is November 19th. It was founded in 1992. It's a thing. Go ahead, have your day. What?
I love it.
It's like, and this isn't an us versus them. I think I know some amazing men who think it's BS that women aren't paid the same, and they think that family, the way we do family care sucks. Like, this is an equality issue. You don't have to be a woman to care about equality.
Absolutely. You may have answered my last question already, but maybe not. I'm not going to assume. So, with all the women, these amazing, incredible women that I have had the hugely great fortune to get to talk to, I'm compiling a playlist of songs. Each woman contributes a song or 2 to the playlist. So I have to ask for your contribution to our playlist.
I get 1 or 2?
1 or 2, whatever.
Oh, goodness. Kate Bush, This Woman's Work.
Nice.
And something from, it's top of mind right now. Something from Patti Smith.
She was just here.
Yeah. That's top of mind. I don't know which one. I'll have to get back to you on the Patti Smith one.
This has been amazing. Like I said, you've been on my list of people who I have admired for quite a while now. I stand up and cheer every time I see one of your Facebook posts, and I think, oh my God, this woman is making me feel more confident to do the things that I want to do, put this podcast out there, or even in my normal day job that I get paid for, like going in and owning it and being a little bit more authentic. You really give people permission to do that, and I hope you know how wide that spreads and how much it really is helping people out there who are seeing what you're putting out there. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's humbling. I don't know how I got here, but I'm happy to do it. We all do better when we all do better.
Heck yeah.
I really like her. Oh, If you're not following Jana on social media, you seriously need to. You can find her on Facebook and on Twitter as @Jana Shortal. And, to be honest, reading her posts every day and seeing her tweets just make me feel braver, dead serious. The thing is, it's not easy to be 100% ourselves. And it's funny how sometimes it feels like we can hurt or disappoint other people, important people in our lives, just by being ourselves. But I just have to believe that life is better and richer when we all show up as real people without the act. It's something I'm working hard to do in my own life. Some days I do it better than others. It goes the other way too. We feel uncomfortable being ourselves because we're afraid other people will judge us. And other people probably have judged us. But we've probably judged other people as well too. And Jana said it beautifully. We all do better when we all do better. So let's try to do better. I want to thank you for being with me this week. And I want to extend a special thank you to Kate, who left me a wonderful comment on iTunes. She said, "This is everything I need right now as I'm feeling my entire life shift in this incredibly positive and powerful way. I can't wait to listen to all of these podcasts on my morning drive." Kate, I hope you liked this one. For those of you who tuned in this week, if you enjoyed this episode, I'd really appreciate it if you could drop me a rating or a review on iTunes. The more people who rate and review my podcast, the more I'm able to reach new people as they're searching for podcasts to listen to. Also, if you enjoyed what Jana had to say, please share this episode with other people. And last, I'm always on the lookout for the next inspiring woman for the podcast. So if you know someone who would make an amazing guest, drop me a message at aprilseifert.com. Now, go do it your way this week, 100%, and have an inspiring week.